Hi, I'm political analyst and Citizen Voice President Gary Dietrich. Right now, trying to help you make sense out of Prop 30, coming up on your California November 2012 ballot. And to help us do that today is Helen Hutchinson with the League of Women Voters of California and John Kupal with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. Thanks a lot for being with us today.
A pleasure.
All right, well, now this is a big one, friends. This is a big one. This is one. Why? Because it would increase taxes. All right? No, but this has got a lot of play. The governor's behind this, has been from the get-go. And what this would do is for people making over $250,000 a year, their income taxes would go up for 7 years. For the rest of Californians, all of Californians, there'd be a quarter-cent sales tax increase over 4 years. This estimated to raise some $6 billion a year to deal with our state's budget deficit. So let's dive right in and ask Helen, why Prop 30? Why do we have this on our ballot this November?
So we recognize that the state budget problems are probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest, problem we've got in California right now. And Prop 30 is the only proposal that will really deal with all of the issues that at least begin to put California back on a fiscal soundness.
Okay, so it's necessary because without this, we're going to what?
We think that the schools and the public safety are really at a breaking point right now. And so what the governor has proposed is a combination of some cuts and some new revenue. And we need the new revenue in order to support the government programs, the schools, the public safety that we think are critical.
Okay. John, your quick take. Why no on 30?
Well, first of all, California is already an overtaxed state. We have some of the highest taxes in America, highest gas tax, highest sales tax rate at the state element. That doesn't even include the local elements. And Californians, and even with Prop 13, we rank 14th out of 50 states in per capita property tax collections. We are a high tax state, and we are paying the price for that right now with the loss of businesses and entrepreneurs out of the state of California. This proposal would clearly make California the highest tax state in America, and the capital flight out of this state would only accelerate. Here in the Sacramento region, we just lost Waste Connections. They moved to Houston. Down the street, Copart and Vacaville moved to Houston. There's a common theme here. We cannot afford higher taxes, particularly when this tax increase is being demanded of us without reforms.
And let me ask you about that, because this tax increase and its impact on businesses and others is clearly a major part of this debate. So I want to give you a chance to respond to that. How do you respond to this notion that increasing taxes is going to make things worse for California in the long run, particularly in an economic recession?
We think that business leaders recognize that without a well-trained workforce, they can't succeed in California, and that unless California as a state is fiscally sound, that they can't succeed. And we think both of those are critical issues that we need to provide education for our children so that we have an educated workforce.
Do you dispute this notion that if this tax increase would cause people to leave the state?
I do, yes.
Okay, and the reason for that is?
Because we will then, by having a sound state, we think California is a place where businesses want to be.
Okay, and let's get something else. I mean, a lot of people are asking these kinds of questions. Is a tax going to really drive people out? And the other big question, John, I'm going to pose to you, and that is simply this. If this doesn't pass, then what in your mind? Governor and the folks downtown in the Capitol say we could have cataclysmic results. How do you respond to that?
Well, these are the same threats that we've heard year after year after year. But there's a reason why Californians have rejected the last 8 statewide proposed tax increases. It's not because Californians are anti-government. I think Californians are very much pro-government, but they want government to perform essential functions, and they want those functions performed efficiently. And they perceive correctly that that's not happening. At the same time the governor is threatening education, he's doubling down on high-speed rail. That's going to be extraordinarily expensive. We have no pension reform, no regulatory reform, no tort reform. We're getting all these tax increases with no reforms at all, and I think Californians have had enough. I think what's happening is, and perhaps the greatest act of fiscal malpractice, is counting on this revenue, notwithstanding the fact that voters have repeatedly rejected tax increases, counting on that in this year's budget. They should not be doing that. They should not be threatening education. They should not be threatening public safety. They should be spending what they have more wisely.
Okay. Helen, I want to give you a chance to respond to this whole notion about cuts. How real are these proposed cuts if this doesn't pass?
They're very real. I said before, and I'll say again, that schools, universities, public safety are at the breaking point. This is part of a package that includes cuts and reforms, and then some new revenue.
And some have said, well, look, don't take it out of the schools. That's always the most popular public education programs, public funded program. People say, there's other places where cuts could be made. John mentioned a couple, pension reform, other types of things. Those haven't yet happened in the state capitol. The governor himself was pushing for those. We'll see if they're yet to happen. But how do you respond to that when people say, there's other places that cuts could be made? Don't take it out on the kids.
The schools are the biggest area that we support with our state money. And so anytime everything is being cut, but the biggest cuts are going to happen in the schools when we cut across the board.
And John, what would you suggest? Let's just say this doesn't pass. Right. What's the plan in the mind of folks like you to deal with the budget deficit at the state level?
Well, first of all, there are a variety of reforms, some of which were proposed by Governor Schwarzenegger with the California Performance Review, a 2-volume set of how to make government more efficient, and we can do that. Deal with Medi-Cal fraud, make local schools more efficient. For example, right now, under state law, local schools are not given the flexibility to contract out non-education services like food service, transportation. Local school districts could save tens of millions of dollars if they were simply given that flexibility.
And they don't have the flexibility
because of state law, and because, quite frankly, and let's call them as we see them, this is a reflection of the absolute lock by the public employee unions on the political process in California. And until that changes, we're not going to see a lot of efficiencies come out of state government.
We do need to deal with that because it's important. As that old adage about following the money, and so we need to talk a little bit about this because the real dollars behind this ballot measure, Helen, have come from public employee unions. And so I want to give you a chance to address that because that's clearly going to be a major part of the debate here this fall. Public employee unions spending millions of dollars to pass this. How do you respond to that?
They are the source of money for progressive movements, and that is the reality. Just as the business community is the source of money for the more conservative side. I'm here representing the Yes on 30 campaign, and we need money to run a campaign.
Okay, John, a stab at that. The major money behind it is from public employee unions. Your quick take on that?
Yeah, I have no doubt that we'll be outspent 20-1, but we've been in that situation before. We defeated Prop 1A in 2009, being grossly outspent again, not because Californians are anti-government. It's just that they perceive, and this includes Democrats and declined estates, they perceive that there is a pervasive dysfunction in Sacramento, and until that changes, they're not going to be approving any more tax increases.
Now, this is a temporary tax increase, as all these typically are. So, Helen, I want you to have a chance to respond to this notion that the sales tax for 4 years, the income tax increase for 7 years. The rationale behind that, that the economy will get better and revenues will bounce back? Is that basically what it's about?
That this will be some of the kickstart that's needed. And this is just a first step towards fiscal soundness in the state.
And the next steps would be?
We hope that it recovers and there will be continued reforms.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, this is also a competing measure, and really, Prop 38, the other measure on the ballot that deals with increasing taxes. I wanted to just give each one of you a chance to respond to that quickly, because there is another measure on the ballot that increases taxes here in California this fall, were it to pass. These have had a lot of competition with each other. Helen, I want you as a yes on 30. Why 30 and not 38?
Because we think Proposition 30 is the only measure which addresses the state's chronic budget mess and gets it moving forward and provides the funding that we need for schools and public safety.
Okay, John?
Well, we oppose both because we think the worst thing that can happen for California right now is to increase taxes. I think as the rest of the nation recovers out of the recession, California is going to be left in the dust because we are making it far more difficult to expand the private sector base. But we do oppose both, but in defense of Prop 38, which again we do oppose, but it does, if you read it very carefully, does guarantee more money going into education. Again, we oppose it, but it has more protections for education, and that's why the California PTA supports 38 and not 30.
Okay, we're going to give you a chance to wrap it up here. 30 seconds from each of you. Let's start with you, Helen. Why should people be voting yes on Prop 30?
Prop 30 begins to move California towards financial stability and adequate funding for all the services that we want from our government. We can't continue to cut vital public services like schools and public safety.
Okay, and John, 30 seconds. Why no?
California is already overtaxed. We don't have reforms. There are repeated examples of waste, fraud, and abuse in California, high-speed rail. The legislature just granted pay increases to many of its staff. The park scandal, $54 million of hidden money. At the same time, they're closing parks. Until Sacramento gets its act together, or at least makes market improvement in that direction, Sacramento has not earned the citizens' trust for more money.
Okay, Helen Hutchinson with the League of California, Legal and Voters of California, and John Capal with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayer Association. Thanks a lot for being with us today.
Very welcome.
And my fellow Californians, you can tell, pretty serious stuff, huh? So make sure that you register and vote on November 6th, and check us out here at citizenvoice.org for all your election needs. We're here to help.